Hey, welcome to the Brainworms podcast, the podcast that, like Walt Disney's Lemmings, just dives headfirst into the garbage of literature and the written word. I'm Joe,
I'm David.
I'm Chris.
and today we're going to talk about Norman Boutin and his novel Empress Theresa. This fellow was apparently a military dentist who gained a reputation for initially shopping this book to various literary forums, and instead of accepting helpful criticism, just got mad, started fights. Apparently, also he got into just multi-tier arguments in Amazon reviews. So kind of an interesting fella. If you want to dive deeper into the history of Norman Boutin, YouTuber Down the Rabbit Hole goes into quite a bit more detail.
And if you just want to kind of kill an afternoon, just go to Amazon and read the reviews because they're probably better than the book.
Probably. And if you want to follow along, if you're a listener or if you just hate yourself, the sample chapter that we're going to be reading is actually easy to find on the Empress Theresa website, along with a lot more of this man's thoughts. So, if that's a journey you want to go on, please do. And before we dive into it, this is the first official recording of this podcast. If you like what you hear, find us on your favorite social medias. We have a Patreon that will help us, buy audio equipment and, in these weird times, potentially eat food. So yeah, and we also have a tip jar at ko-fi.com. Just find us on Brainworms Podcast.
All right, so diving in. But so before chapter 1, there's an author's note, and I'm just going to read it verbatim.
Please
Author's note. This chapter sets up the story. Chapters 2 and 3 will show Theresa's maturation into a teenager and introduce Steve Hartley, who will be critical to the story. The action will begin in chapter 4. It's cliché to put a murder, explosion, or something of that nature on page 1 to grab the reader. But in Empress Theresa, the characters are the most important element of the story. The eye-popping scenes will take care of themselves later.
So,
okay then.
Very much like somebody explaining why they committed a murder, like to justify it. You have this.
Yeah, is that it? Like, is he just saying, like, if you're bored as shit by this first chapter, it's not because I'm a bad writer. It's because I'm changing the nature of storytelling.
Right. I feel like if you have to put an apology before your first chapter explaining that chapter 1 kind of doesn't go anywhere, guys, but really stick around for chapter 4.
Yeah,
you should have just started your book at chapter 4.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you'll hear that about video games. Like, all right, the first 10 hours, they're a lot, but then it gets real good after like those 10 hours. I promise.
Right. Real quick,
or like...
I'm sorry, David, go ahead, because I have a bit of a spiel.
Oh, no problem. It just, it's like when you hear about a series or something and people will say, the first season and a half kind of sucks, but really, once you get to the second half of season 2, it's really good. And then there's a couple of good episodes in season 3, and then it kind of falls off again, but really you should watch it.
Yeah.
Okay. I have an example of this that I'm curious what your guys' opinion on it is. So there was a thing that I followed back when I was in college called Homestuck. It's a online.
Oh sure, yeah, I know Homestuck.
Okay, so whenever I tried to get people into it, I would have to do the thing where it seems aimless for the first little bit, but that's literally because it is the author. What he would do is he would have like a forum on his website where it was like a Joe, help me out. What's the like you're locked in a room. What
Oh,
do you
choose
do?
your own adventure. You
Yeah,
have.
thank you. It was like a choose your own adventure thing where he would do like a little art piece of like the webcomic and then like describe a situation, and then the first person to post like do this on his forum, he would then do the next panel based on that. So Homestuck starts out with literally no aim in mind, and then somewhere along that that interaction with his fans, he uh, got inspired into a larger story and took full control of the webcomic.
Mhm.
Is that a mitigating circumstance, would you guys say?
I would say so, if only because that's interesting.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, the idea that you're allowing your fans to kind of set the foundation for the story you're going to tell until you actually find something that inspires you. That's interesting, and that's something you don't really see. But I don't feel like that was Norman's.
no. And I know that we're kind of prolonging the inevitable here, possibly to David's benefit. But can we just take a second? I've sent you the cover art to this book. Can we just look at it and just gaze into the, I believe, painted by the author, this image?
Joe, I need you like this is important to me. I need you to do me a favor and Google or just do some minor amount of research and try to find out where this cover art came from. That's
Sure.
important.
Yeah, and
I would do it myself, but
probably something I
I
should
don't
have done when I
working.
was preparing the show notes. Empress Theresa cover. Edit so much of this out.
Oh yeah, sure.
Can confirm, painted by the author.
Okay, bigger question: does he have other art?
Fun fact: he did a different cover originally, and it was one of the things that the reviewers were like, "This cover is bad."
Oh,
So he painted. This is the new and improved version.
Huh. Well, I mean,
The original cover. Holy shit!
Oh, Joe, please.
I got it. I got you.
Oh, okay, first of all, I don't mean to be one of those people that's like, like your art's bad, because I of course can't paint. I don't know where I was going with that. This robbed my thought. It is I can't say this.
Uh-huh.
I can't say this. The second cover is an improvement.
It is an upgrade. You're not wrong.
The thing is, like, I will give him credit for the sort of DIY nature of this book.
Sure. Like this is totally a punk rock thing that he's done.
Absolutely. Super punk rock. Like this is, I had an idea, I realized it, I made it happen. If you're hearing this, Norman, I give you credit for that. Like you did a thing, man. You powered through and you built this, well, empire from the ground up. But lean on your friends, bro. Like you got to know someone who can paint. And I don't know, accept criticism.
Yeah. or do what most of the self-published art or authors, I'm sorry, on Amazon do, and just buy stock art.
Sure. I mean, this was clearly his baby. He had something to say.
Well, I can't disrespect that. Like he was the little engine that could.
Stock art may not have been like suitable. Like on the original cover art, there's definitely a lot of symbolism here. Like these okay, these 5 stars, that means something. If that is some sort of like official military thing, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't know. It's out of my field.
I don't
And
know.
I believe he did serve in the military, so that might be, yeah.
Well, you said he was a dentist.
Yeah, he was an army dentist, yeah.
So like there's like these things on the first cover art, like this is important stuff, obviously. Like it looks like there's some kind of like a virus in the top left. We have, you know, a fighter plane. You know, these things must play some important role.
Sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure the whole story is laid out there right on the cover.
Yeah, it's like an Edgar Wright movie. Just the whole plot is laid out right at the beginning.
And also the symbolism of Empress Theresa holding the world in her hands, like, you know, like there's a message being sent here.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So I think I'm just going to jump in here to
dive in.
Chapter
Let's go.
1. Chapter 1. I'm Theresa, the younger daughter of Edward and Elizabeth Sullivan, and I hope it's not bragging to say I was cute as heck at age 10. Everybody in the family said so. I was the princess in the Sullivan clan of Framingham, Massachusetts, because besides being cute, I was a whiz in school and had a good disposition. All the relatives expected great things from me.
I think Norman Boutin really likes this character that he's created.
Oh, yeah.
How old is the character currently, like talking to us?
We haven't found out yet.
Yeah, maybe they're writing as an adult, having these memories. I'm honestly not sure.
Nobody could have dreamed of what I would do a few years later, and nobody would have believed it if they'd been told. Prime Minister Blair said I'd still be remembered in 1,000,000 years. Did you catch that? Churchill, Hitler, and Lincoln will be footnotes in dusty history books 1,000 years from now, and nobody remembers Charles Martel, who saved Christianity in Europe by winning the Battle of Tours 1,300 years ago to set up the world as we know it today. But Prime Minister Blair said I'd be remembered for 1,000,000 years. Mr. Blair is not inclined to exaggerating. I was the last person you would expect to earn that accolade. I was a nobody from nowhere. When this story began, I was a little girl who didn't have much of a clue about anything. My job as a kid was to figure out what the heck was going on and what to do about it. It's not easy when you're young and everything is brand new.
I'm sorry to interrupt. That's kind of how everybody starts out, though. You start out as a kid not knowing what anything is or what to do about it.
Yeah, does that really bear stating? Like, you've established that you're writing about your time as a child. Like, that's really all the audience needs. Like, we get it.
Yeah. So, okay. Let me just give me just a second here because wow. Okay. So, my father once served a tour in the Navy. He said I had to be the captain of my ship, but sometimes the seas would be rough. I had to learn all I could about the world. I wondered, why should I be worrying about it in the 4th grade? I'd soon find out. We're lost in this confusing world unless we follow the directions of its maker. I did. It's the only thing that got me through. Everybody has pressures. There are 2 kinds. One is threats to your life and health. I had more than my share of that with 1,000 assassins wanting to get me. The other kind is bearing responsibility for other people's lives and welfare.
Now wait,
that's really tough if you care about them.
Is this 1,000 assassins all at once?
Well, probably not. And I'll give Norman here credit for one thing. He is setting up like you want your reader to be invested in what's going on. Like, and now we've got, okay, so this starts with a 10-year-old 4th grader who apparently does something that will make her be remembered for 1,000,000 years and had assassination attempts.
1,000 of them.
1,000.
Yeah.
Like she said, 1,000 assassins, not attempts. So like one assassin could try multiple times. So it's at least 1,000.
Right. I'll be telling my own story, which is a good thing because nobody knows it as well as me. The drawback is that there are some things I can't know because I wasn't there. For example, Prime Minister Blair and President Stinson mentioned they talked to each other on the phone. They must have talked with many other heads of state, and it would be interesting to know what was said. It's a sure bet they discussed how to eliminate me if I got out of control, but I can't know any of that. It can be frustrating not knowing these things. But remember, you'll learn things in the same sequence I did.
That's
Somebody else
storytelling,
telling
Norman.
my story could only say what I did in the world. They couldn't get in my head like you will. You'll see what a horrible worldwide mess I had to deal with.
The audience just wouldn't know that she doesn't know things that she
Until
wasn't
she knows them. That's narration.
Yeah.
It's an interesting choice, and this might just be me, to use an actual prime minister and a fictional president.
I was thinking about that.
I have to
yeah.
wonder what's going on there.
Okay, I thought that was just me.
No. So, yeah, I don't know because I'm reading this on the computer. I'm not sure how far along this would go, but I mean, we've been at this now for a few minutes, and so the next line is, "My story began quietly with no hint of what was coming. I was home with my 17-year-old sister Catherine, who was old enough to be my babysitter. She made it possible for Mom to go back to her part-time job without leaving me alone. Catherine hadn't been a whiz in school like me, and she was thinking of going to one of the many trade schools around Boston after high school. Mom and Dad said I should go to college. Oops! Before going on, I have to mention an odd incident that happened 6 months before I was born. Mom was raking leaves in the backyard when she noticed a fox sitting on its haunches 10 feet away. It was staring at her. A metal rake is a good weapon against a creature as small as a fox, and Mom held her ground. After 5 minutes, the fox walked away. This strange event seemed unimportant. My parents forgot about it for 18 years. Okay, now I can begin my story."
The story hasn't started yet, Norman?
Apparently not.
Real quick, and you're good.
Also, like as if Norman is typing this and he's like, "Oh wait, I didn't mention the fox."
Yeah, like it's like he literally forgot to put that bit in.
Yeah, like there's a thing on the keyboard called backspace.
Yeah, it's fine, man. Also, real quick, and this might just be me listening to the reading, but are all of these sentences very similarly structured in an almost very hypnotic, boring to hear way, or is that just me hearing it?
I mean, so the next line is, "Our house was next to a pond close to the river where all the neighborhood's kids spent many happy hours looking for turtles and frogs. I was lounging on the deck reading a book on the school's summer list. Catherine was inside reading a magazine. Taking a momentary break from the book, I noticed a red fox walking along the pond's edge. It disappeared behind the little patch of woods which Dad let grow wild like most of the neighbors. This was very rare. Red foxes were never seen in broad daylight during the summer months. It didn't happen. Then something really amazing happened. It came out of the woods and walked towards me. I kept still and waited to see how close it came before noticing me. It was 60 feet away, 40, 20. By now it was clear it was looking at me.
Is Norman playing Warhammer 40,000? It was 60 feet away, then 40 feet, then 20 feet. It was within firing range at that time. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. What? Oh, okay. Wow, just reading ahead here a little bit.
Hey, come on now.
By now, it was clear it was looking at me. I considered running into the house, but curiosity won out. The fox reached the 4 steps of the deck. It came up on the steps, stopped, and sat on its haunches staring at me. It did not seem vicious, so I waited. In an instant, faster than you could blink an eye, a softball-sized white ball emerged from the fox and went straight into my stomach.
Excuse me.
I screamed and ran into the house. The fox ran away. I slid the glass deck door closed and locked it just in time to see the fox disappear into the woods. "What did you scream for?" asked Catherine, who had walked into the kitchen. "There was a fox out there. He won't hurt you," she said as it went back to the living room. I stood at the glass door for 5 minutes, watching for anything else that might happen. At last, I thought it was all over. I went into the living room to sit down and think. What was that white thing? I couldn't come up with any theory. It was nothing I had ever seen on those television nature programs. Perhaps it was a daydream from not eating enough. Mom had warned me about that. At age 10, I was already conscious of my weight and tried to stay skinny. I should eat something.
If your mother is warning you that you might have visual hallucinations from lack of low blood sugar, I feel like that's a larger medical problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, again, I'm not going to knock, so far, I'm not going to knock the story. I'm only probably ultimately 4 or 5 pages in is what this would translate into in print.
Sure.
And it's the sort of thing that I would keep reading. However, the actual writing itself, it just needs an editor.
It does.
There are just that's really what it comes down to. It just needs an edit.
And and Joe, to add on to what you were saying, I've been having to make a conscious effort to stay focused.
Well, are you getting the like very similarly structured sentences back to back to back to back to back?
Yeah, it is a little bit like that. And I feel like maybe this was one of those things where, I'm pretty. This is not his first draft, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was the second.
Sure.
And that's just not enough.
No.
Yeah. I can keep going here. There's a lot more.
Well, that's what we're here for, right?
That's what we that's what we do.
All right.
We promise content.
I went into the kitchen to prepare an early lunch of fried eggs, a strip of bacon, toast, and milk. I gobbled all this down in a couple of minutes and soon felt better. It was too little eating after all. Nothing had really happened. Satisfied, I walked back into the living room to find something else to do. I turned on the television and watched the late morning talk shows for a while. I heard fire trucks in the distance blaring their deep-toned sirens. These trucks could be heard from a mile away. They were coming closer and closer. Soon the sound made it obvious they were in the vicinity of our street. My intuition told me that had something to do with the white thing that jumped at me. That's a big leap.
Weird assumption
Also,
to make.
Would you normally describe a fire engine siren as deep-toned?
No, not
now that
myself.
I think about it. Yeah, now that you've said it. Yeah.
That's more like a wailing, screeching.
Yeah. I went out the front door and waited on the lawn. The sirens were very close, and yes, there they were, turning into the street. A tanker truck and a small ladder truck. The two vehicles went halfway down the street and stopped. Already people were coming out of houses to watch the excitement. The yellow fire engines had loudspeakers that sent out vocal messages loud enough to rattle windows. A conversation was going on between the firemen and the station. "What do you have?" 115 degrees here, a fireman shouted. "It's 70 here." "Yup, we have something." A crowd of neighbors was gathering near the confused firemen. I walked over to join the onlookers. "What's going on?" I asked one of my girlfriends. "They're looking for a fire." The girl's father said the temperature jumped up in a few minutes. Somebody called the fire department.
What fuck?
It was hot. It was nice a little while ago. I thought it over. A fox appears in daylight, which never happens. It comes up practically to my feet. The white thing jumps into me, and the firemen look for a fire that doesn't exist.
So
All
hold on,
this
David.
happened
I'm
within an
sorry.
hour. There had to be a connection.
The
Oh,
ambient temperature got hotter outside. There's no fire, but
Not-
just the ambient temperature of the neighborhood got warmer.
no. Not just got warmer. The fireman said 115 degrees. That's not a little like.
Yeah,
ooh,
like I don't know
it's
much
hot.
of thermodynamics, but I feel like that's a larger concern.
It depends on what what thing they were using to measure this. Like what? How did they localize the temperature raise?
Well,
Like,
I'm assuming that they have thermometers.
Is that the thing? Like that like somebody just had a thermometer hanging outside and then it just the red went up real high and Frosty the Snowman melted?
I mean,
And they were
I feel like you would notice if it had been 70 degrees and suddenly it was 115
sure.
because you'd fucking die.
Yeah, that is a very spontaneous rise in that would have some physiological effects probably.
Right. Okay.
Don't call the fire department, call the X-Files.
Right. Before long, the fire chief arrived in his yellow sedan. He asked the lead fireman if anything had been found. Then they walked over somebody's property to look at the pond. Nothing there. Could it be a ground fire? The fireman asked the chief. Not likely with water over there unless there's a rock ledge underneath. We have to check it out. Thermistor probes were brought from the station, and firemen spent the rest of the morning pushing the probes a few inches into the ground to check the temperature. They did this on everyone's lawn, the area inside the turnaround at the end of the street, and finally went into people's backyards. They found nothing. At 1 o'clock, the temperature in our neighborhood had dropped back down to 80 degrees. The firemen gave up and left. I was young and inexperienced, but I wasn't a dumbbell. If people found out what happened today, they'd pester me about it forever. My cousin Mary was diagnosed as schizophrenic, and the whole Sullivan clan was biting their nails, waiting for the gene to show up in some other family member. It wasn't going to be me. I resolved to never tell anybody.
Theresa, you just had a visual hallucination.
They'd think I was ill like Cousin Mary. I didn't need it.
I do actually like this line of reasoning for why she wouldn't tell anyone, though. Like that, like I could see that. I could see someone having a hallucination and like, oh god, like maybe I'm like that. I don't want to be that.
Sure.
Yeah,
and,
that's fair.
You know, you're especially at whatever 8 or 10, whatever.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So that is the first scene. Still in the first chapter, mind you, but that's the first like we break from.
Sure.
And now, 2 days later, I woke up early and walked into the living room. Mom was looking intently out the window. "What's going on?" I asked. "There's some men parked down next to the turnaround. They've been there all night." I looked, and sure enough, a van and a 4-door sedan were parked in the turnaround where they could see every house on the street. "Mrs. Gagnon said a police car stopped to talk to them at 2 a.m., said Mom. "They showed IDs, and a little later the police left." Dad woke up and heard the same story. As Mom and Dad got ready for work, another police car came around the street, but left without stopping. Other people left for work. The morning wore on. The mail truck came by at 10. I walked out to get the mail while Catherine was in her room. 2 minutes later, after I got back in the house, the car and van drove away. They had spotted me. How did they know about me?
What do you mean they spotted you? You're there. You live in the house. That they're
Also, if she's concerned about schizophrenia, this is
yeah,
a little bit of
a
paranoia.
little bit.
Yeah, so jury's out here, Teresa. I'm thinking maybe you should go in and get tested, kid.
Yeah.
You know, that's actually going to be a thing that's going to come up throughout this entire book, isn't it? That like schizophrenia is potentially in her genetics.
Like maybe there's going to be like a Fight Club twist, like it was all in her mind the whole time.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really confused by everything that just happened. Like there were, black vans in the cul-de-sac observing the neighborhood. She came outside and just out of the living room and just lived her life for a minute. They drove away and she was just like, "Oh fuck, they saw me."
That's
Did I miss something? Yeah. I mean, aside from that, yeah, like that's just weird paranoia. But
yeah, that really just ramps things up. Like, okay, I'm not going to tell anybody about this weird white ball that popped out of a fox into me.
Mm.
But like, you have no reason. The character of Theresa has no reason in this to have any idea what that is, what it signifies. It's one thing if the audience is not certain.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there's something about it, but why does she have any reason to be afraid that people are coming for her?
Yeah, she just kind of jumped to that conclusion, and like the weird ambient temperature leap is part of it somehow. I don't know.
So this is interesting here. I sat on the sofa thinking for a while. I felt I was being watched, or was somebody listening? I spotted the phone. Was somebody listening on the phone? I dialed 0 for the operator. Operator, how may I help you? Can I have the number for Alice Pizza in Framingham? 1 moment, please. 10 seconds later, another woman said, Alice Pizza, 555-8402. Thanks. I hung up. So they weren't listening.
What? How would... What?
And again, this is very schizoid.
Yeah, like...
The weekend arrived. Mom and I went to Boston to shop in the Washington Street shopping district. We drove down to the Boston Commons underground parking garage. I thought I saw some car come in right behind us and park close to our car. We got up to the surface and a man followed us. We went to the Barnes & Noble bookstore first because if we bought something, it would be small and easy to carry the rest of the day.
I don't know.
I looked through the books. We did not need that. No. I looked through the books on sale and thought I saw a different man watching me. Barnes & Noble had 2 floors. I'm going upstairs, Mom, I said. And again, you probably could have just said, I'm going upstairs, and trusted that your audience would understand that that meant the store had an upstairs.
Yeah.
There was an escalator to the 2nd floor. I went along the wall, stopping now and then, pretending to look at books and that same man from downstairs always seemed to be close to me. He was spying on me. Later, we went to McDonald's.
Before we go on this journey, did he just tell us there's an escalator to the 2nd floor? Just sandwiched in between 2 other sentences. There's an escalator in this Barnes & Noble bookstore.
Well,
which isn't uncommon at all. Like,
like it's pretty standard. Like that whole sentence could have just been cut out of the book and nothing would have changed.
No, but Joe, how would we know that it was an escalator?
Yeah.
The audience would be left to wonder. And
did she throw a grappling hook and climb and rappel to the 2nd? Like, we don't know, Norman. You got to tell us there's an escalator or stairs.
Oh, man. Later, we went to McDonald's, and I spotted another man who walked behind us into the restaurant. He was there as long as we were, and after we left, I looked back, and he was coming out too. But he stopped at a corner. Another man standing on the corner started walking in our direction. We got back home, and Mom took things into the bedroom. I dialed the operator again. Operator, how may I help you? Can you give me the number for Alice Pizza in Framingham? One moment, please. I waited, and waited, and waited. A full minute passed by, and she hadn't come up with the number yet. I hung up the phone. Now they knew I knew.
What?
Okay.
What?
So, okay, maybe there's something to that I don't know. Like, I'm a full-grown man, 41 years old, and if I thought my phone was tapped, I don't know, like, I never would have thought calling the operator and asking for a line would indicate that the phone was. That's just not something I know.
Yeah, like
How
that
does
sounds absurd.
How does a 10-year-old know that?
Right. Like it is possible that Norman knows something that we don't about how wiretaps work.
Right. That's part of his life
so-
experience. Sure.
Yeah.
Likelihood of that is high considering he's been in the military. That may have been something covered.
Maybe, sure.
Yeah. I'm saying, like.
But how does Theresa know that?
Precisely.
And also, explaining how Theresa knows that would explain that to the audience. And
Right.
then the audience would know.
Right.
Maybe he could have added that in instead of, escalators. Just a thought. Just a thought. While I was young, I had some feeble ideas of what this all meant. My life wasn't going to be like that of other kids. I had to think like somebody important, somebody with responsibilities. I was something special. Maybe I was dangerous, or that was what the government was thinking. Someday, they would come around and talk to me. I wasn't stupid enough to think they would just watch me for the rest of my life. Yeah, so far what I'm getting from this is Theresa is a severely troubled child.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe if her parents had said, we might have some things in our family history. If you're experiencing symptoms, you can talk to us and we won't judge you, and not taught her to live in fear, then maybe this would have all gone a different way.
2 days later, Mom took me to a nearby strip mall. There was a DVD movie rental store. I looked around for the classic movie 2001, A Space Odyssey.
A film every 10-year-old loves.
Oh, yes.
We know she's a real smart kid.
They'd shown it on television a couple months ago. I played and replayed the parts of the movie where the astronauts talked to Hal. The most chilling scene was when astronaut Dave Bowman left the spaceship in a pod to retrieve the body of his dead astronaut partner drifting through space. When he flew back to the spaceship, he said one of Hollywood's most famous lines. "Open the pod bay doors, Hal." But the spaceship's computer, Hal, wouldn't open the door. It was a creepy scene. The summer days rolled by. I saw the watchers following me everywhere. Mom did most of her...
Wait. No, hang on. What's the connective tissue?
It was just in there.
Yeah, maybe
we'll get
to it. Maybe, but
And also, I understand that, if you want to reference something, and it's a very powerful thing. One of the things that can completely take the power out of like a scene or a part in a book or any kind of story is you trying to convey that yourself with your own words and spoiling the scene because you can't do it justice.
Yeah, and also remind your audience of the much more interesting thing they could be watching than reading your book.
The summer days rolled by. I saw the watchers following me everywhere. Mom did most of her grocery shopping on Saturday, and I usually went with her because Catherine wandered off with her friends. While Mom was talking to the meat counter clerk, I went down the breakfast cereal aisle to choose something. Hi, Theresa. Some woman I didn't know was standing next to me. She looked to be in her early 20s and had a friendly smile. Hi, I said with a young kid's taciturnity. Do you have a cell phone? Yeah. Call me when you're alone. She handed me a piece of paper with a phone number.
Red flag. Red flag.
Yeah.
When your mom isn't around.
The woman knew that I knew about my watchers. I had often stared at them. So this woman also knew I had to think she was one of them, and I had to be curious enough to talk to her. When we got back home, I went to my room and called the number. My curiosity about the watchers overcame my wish to keep Hal secret.
Wait.
What?
What the fuck is when did Hal happen? Is the white ball Hal?
Apparently that's the connection we were supposed to make as readers.
I disagree.
Yeah, unless I missed something.
I wanted to know how they knew about me. The woman answered. Her spies must have told her I was home. Hi, said the cheerful woman. I'm Jan Struthers from the United States government. Are you alone?
Just from the government.
Just the government.
Yeah. Are you? You know I'm not. There are 60 people with me in this room. Can we talk? My childhood was over. All I wanted was an ordinary life like everybody else. It looked like I wouldn't get it.
I call into question any government organization that's apparently observing and tailing this child and can be easily spotted.
Yeah.
You're not good spies.
No.
If that's
if you can be
that easy to, yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe Hal told her. Maybe it was the white ball that
maybe that again.
I still disagree that the white ball is Hal.
I don't know what else it could be.
Does she want to keep a secret that she likes 2001: A Space Odyssey?
So, can we talk about what? About your little secret. We know it.
Red flag.
I thought about that. Everybody had secrets. Talking to this woman wouldn't be admitting mine. Something happened to you to make those fire trucks come to this neighborhood. You were giving off a lot of heat. We know you were because we saw it all around you. What happened before the fire trucks came? I don't have to tell you anything, do I? Jan Struthers maintained her friendly attitude. No, you don't. But it will make things a lot easier if you tell us something. We're not going away. We will be spying on you from now on. We have to. Whatever happened is very important.
Anymore. It's monitoring.
You don't know anything that happened? We know a lot. Something from outer space came to Earth 7 years ago. We've been looking for it ever since. That heat you were giving off has to have something to do with that thing from outer space. I considered that. Jan Struthers gave me a moment and then brought out a point. There is nothing natural to Earth that could have caused that heat. The thing from space did it. We watched you rent that movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey. You're aware of that thing. What happened before the fire trucks came?
Fucking what?
What?
What? There was no use denying something happened. They already knew. I saw a fox walking near the water. It came up close to me, and a white thing jumped out of it. That's all. Where did the white thing go? In me. How big was this white thing? Like a softball.
I knew he was going to use softball again. I just knew it.
Did it come from the fox? Yep, came right out. What part of the fox? The stomach? How did it jump out at you? It moved in my stomach. I wasn't very enthusiastic about telling the story. Jan Struthers had to force it out of me one tiny piece at a time. How long did that take? Like that. I snapped my fingers at the phone. Did you feel anything? Nope. Did this white ball look like solid, like a steel ball? Nope. Fuzzy, like cotton. What happened then? I ran into the house and waited. Then I ate breakfast. I thought I was going crazy. How long after the white ball jumped at you did the fire trucks come? Half an hour. Did the white thing change you in any way? No. Does it make sounds or talk to you? No. Have you seen it again? No. It's like it went away. How have you been eating lately? Like I always do.
With my mouth.
Jan took a break to think about what else she should ask. This was the most important interview since Moses came down the mountain.
What?
Mm-hmm. Would you be willing to come in to talk to some smart people and figure out what this thing is? I didn't do anything. All right. She dropped that line immediately. You rented 2001, A Space Odyssey. What did it show you? It showed me don't talk to this thing. It's like talking to the devil. Do you have a name for it? Hal. Like the computer. The monolith was the alien, not the computer. The monolith didn't talk. Does Hal talk? No. It's a good idea not to try to talk to it. Don't stir it up. What is Hal? We don't know. We saw it 7 years ago, but haven't seen or heard about it since. You're the only one who's seen it. Does it come from space? Probably, but that may not be bad. This thing may never do anything. I think that covers everything. I have to emphasize how important it is to tell nobody about this. Don't give a hint to anybody. If you talk to somebody, they will too, and you will never be able to live the life you want. No college, no job, no marriage, no friends. You'll have to stay at home all the time. This is the last thing we want. A lot of people are trying to keep this secret. What if one of my watchers talks? Most of our people don't know why they're watching you. Only the people at the top know. I'm one of the few people who knows you give off heat. Without knowing that, nobody can prove you have anything to do with Hal. That's the biggest secret. Without knowing about the heat, they can't spot you or suspect anything. Don't those 60 people know about me?
Pause. What is one of the most common symptoms of being sick?
A fever.
You're telling me that she's gone this whole time and her parents who hug and kiss her haven't gone, oh, you're warm.
You're literally hot enough to start fires with your skin.
You're 115. No, you're hot enough to make the ambient temperature in the area 115 degrees.
Which makes you a lot hotter.
Yeah, like at the source, yeah.
Also, like, just know.
I still would love to know how they can tell, is it a satellite that's taking thermographic, whatever it's called, like images of the Earth, and they're like, oh, look at this heat pocket here.
I can only assume.
Yeah, and it's we're about halfway through the first chapter at this point, by the way. I don't know if I can keep going.
Yeah, like that's fine.
It's like what's the author's name again, Joe?
Norman Boutin.
It's like Norman was like, hey, can you hold this for me? And we were like, sure. We take it in our arms, like, oh, this isn't too bad. And he keeps adding more stuff onto it. and just more and more, and
It just piles
like,
up. Yeah.
yeah, like,
just
when does
I,
this end?
I feel it's important at this point to also remind you guys that before we started, there was an author's note where Norman specifically said none of this is actually important to the story. The story itself doesn't start until chapter 4.
Yeah.
And we're only halfway through chapter 1. What's in chapters 2 and 3?
Yeah. Fuck,
How
man.
much is this book? Because I need to find out.
I'll follow up. Yeah, maybe a few episodes down the line we'll at least finish. We'll do part 2 and finish chapter 1. So, I mean, and it's kind of implied. Like, I think we've kind of gotten there. Do you think that this book is as bad as multiple forum commenters and Amazon reviewers seem to think it was? Like, are you going to finish this book on your own time? What's our collective opinion about Empress Theresa based on?
I at first I was like, yeah, they were being real rough on this, and I was starting it and I'm thinking it's not as bad. This isn't the worst thing. This isn't the verbal or literary equivalent of The Room.
Right.
That's not what's happening here. But halfway through chapter 1, when our 10-year-old main character, who apparently magically has a cell phone that didn't come up prior to, is given a phone number by a representative of the U.S. government and makes a call to the U.S. government and has a nice little conversation about an alien object that came out of a fox into her stomach. And they don't just fucking kidnap her.
Yeah.
And, like, I'm sorry, but I'm willing to believe alien ball from space jumps out of a fox into a kid's stomach.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a big nerd. Like, I'll take the journey up to a certain point.
But I'm not willing to believe that they're not going to just come and get her.
Yeah, at that point.
That they're going to do that. Like,
Yeah.
that's what's going to happen. They're not just going to let her live her life. She's going to be taken either, some thing is going to be drummed up and they're going to tell her parents that she's an honors scholar and they're going to come and take her and put her in a lab somewhere and run tests on her without her even knowing what they're doing. Or barring that, if the parents don't sign off, they're just going to send vans in the night.
Right.
And, like, let's be honest here. That's what's going to happen.
Well, theoretically, so we know that this thing is from outer space. This could be some sort of invasive alien thing. The possibility of it being lethal to the planet as a whole is completely within.
Yeah, like given the temperature, like just if you could extract it as an energy source.
Right. And I think, again, I fall back on, honestly, I think there are some interesting things here. There are some elements of this. I'd be tempted to give the whole thing a read.
Right.
Like just to find out where it's going and see what's going to happen here. But but it really just needs an edit. It just needs, this book could be half its length. I'm certain.
Oh yeah.
And
I don't know where the fuck 2001: A Space Odyssey came in. Like that just kind of happened.
I'm willing to shell out the money to find out what keep going. I'll pay for this book.
I mean, absolutely do that. But are you prepared to give Norman Boutin money?
Absolutely.
Fair enough.
Like,
I don't know if I am.
I mean, he's probably not like a terrible guy. He sounds kind of like he sounds foolish, but he doesn't sound like ill-willed.
Sure.
No, and I think
he seems very thin-skinned based on like the whole review controversy.
Thin-skinned and definitely faith-forward. Like, this is a person who has a very strong belief, and I think this book was his way of writing at least 400 pages of a manifesto on his belief of how people should behave.
Which are my favorite things.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're like C.S. Lewis, I can kind of like get away with, because he's a pretty good writer. It's fine. Like, you know, have your allegory, like, we get it. But Norman Boutin maybe shouldn't be given that power.
Any copyrighted content contained within this podcast is used for purposes of review. Brainworms podcast is David Combs, Christian Schaefer, and Joseph Wells. Editing and post-production by David Combs. Art provided by Kane Magdalene. The theme music is Hodgepod No. 1 by Brian Davis. If you like what you heard, please support us on Patreon or Ko-Fi, or by leaving a review on your favorite listening app.